Previously in the world of Hornblower. We watch the young and untested Horatio Hornblower rise to the challenges of naval life in the even chance. From enduring the brutality of shipboard politics to outmanoeuvring French forces, Hornblower proved his mettle not just as a sailor but as a leader. He stood up to bullies, navigated treacherous waters, both literal and moral, and earned the trust of Captain Pellew and the respect of his fellow officers. But this journey was only the beginning. Now, the next episode of the Hornblower ITV series, The Examination for Lieutenant, also known in the US as the Fire Ship. Hornblower faces a new kind of test, the official examination that will determine whether he can finally, formally become a lieutenant in His Majesty's Navy. But as ever, war, politics, and personal demons are never far behind. Now, the show once again combines chapters from Mr. Midshipman into one episode, specifically the chapter Noah's Ark, which deals with a quarantine storyline, along with the Examination for Lieutenant chapter, which deals with Hornblower's exam and heroics. Now to the plot. The episode opens with Captain Pellew nominating Hornblower for his lieutenant's exam, a significant endorsement and a mark of trust. But it's quickly clear this is not a simple academic challenge. Hornblower's preparation is constantly disrupted by the ever-turning wheels of naval life, not least at all by an increasingly dire supply situation. Spain, having signed a peace with France, becomes a quasi-enemy, seizing British supply ships and leaving the Gibraltar fleet hungry and desperate. On board the HMS Indefatigable, rations are cut in half, and tensions simmer. Enter Captain Dreadnought Foster, a famously reckless hero pulled from the wreckage of one such lost supply ship. Foster's presence is a wild card, part folk legend, part loose cannon. He respects courage, but scoffs at caution, and his influence quietly looms over the episode. Bunting, a sailor, voices his thoughts dangerously close to mutiny. His friend, Finch, ill and weakened by the rationing, dies, highlighting the physical and emotional cost of naval service during wartime. Hornblower, trying to balance his compassion with command responsibility, is caught in the middle. When Bunting is caught stealing food, Hornblower is forced to lead him through the brutal punishment of running the gauntlet, an act that is both physically and psychologically scarring for them both. Meanwhile, Hornblower and Mr. Tapling from the diplomatic service, who we may notice is another sharp alumni. He plays Wagon Master General Colonel Runciman. They are sent to shore to Oran to buy supplies. Now, those that may require a slight geography lesson, Oran is a coastal city located in northwest Algeria. There, however, they learn of a deadly plague outbreak, the Black Death, as Mr. Tapling explains. Because of this, quarantine protocols dictate that anyone who went ashore must remain isolated for 3 weeks, effectively trapping Hornblower and a makeshift crew aboard the supply schooner Caroline. Now captain in all but name, Hornblower takes charge of this temporary crew. Bunting tries to flee. This time, Hornblower must imprison him. Yet, ever the optimist, Hornblower offers him a chance at redemption. It's one of the many moments in the series that underlines Hornblower's belief in duty, but also in second chances. Having said that, it does feel as if Bunting is somewhat of a lost cause. Bunting attempts to work with his crewmates, but the death of his friend Finch is too upsetting and he continues to grieve. And that's even after Hornblower gives the crew some nice juicy meat. When the crew goes ashore to fetch water, they are attacked by Spanish soldiers. Bunting panics and tries to escape again. This time, however, he forces Hornblower to kill him. It's a sad, sobering moment that underscores the loneliness of leadership and the psychological burden Hornblower carries, even when doing what's right. As Hornblower returns from this incident, he sees the HMS Dreadnought under the command of Captain Foster retrieving a few sides of that juicy beef from their quarantined ship. And despite Hornblower warning him the quarantine has not yet expired, Foster threatens Hornblower that he will take it by force if he does not concede. Hornblower reluctantly allows this. Now, surely this disagreement is very much unlikely to bite Hornblower in the arse in the future. Well, I guess we will just see. At the end of the quarantine, no one appears ill, so they can rejoin the fleet, where Hornblower receives a tongue-in-cheek rebuke from Pellew for the wanton extravagance of allowing his men to eat fresh beef. The episode reaches its climax during Hornblower's long-anticipated lieutenant exam, and unfortunately, our friend Captain Foster is on the exam panel. Let's just hope he doesn't hold any grudges, eh? A little bit of fun continuity error from the show. When Hornblower arrives for the examination, his hat is in normal shape. When the officer notices him and smiles, the hat is crumbled as it was on the ship in the previous scene. Hornblower's nerves get the better of him at first, and failure seems imminent, until a bit of luck. A Spanish fireship drifts into the harbour. So, luck and not luck, I suppose. Acting instinctively, Hornblower volunteers to board it with Foster. Together they manage to steer the burning vessel away from the fleet, risking their lives to prevent catastrophe. Because of his heroism, Hornblower is not demoted to midshipman, but keeps his acting lieutenant's rank and receives permission to take the exam again at a future date. Now that's kind of the general plot of the episode, so let's kind of dig into what really makes the episode tick. This episode is rich with character moments that show growth, conflict, and the subtle shaping of identity, especially in the case of Hornblower himself. He begins the story in a moment of anticipation, hopeful but quietly burdened. Pellew's confidence in nominating him for the lieutenant's exam is both a privilege and a pressure, and throughout the episode, we see that weight reflected in every decision he makes. Hornblower isn't just tested in the formal examination room, he's tested as a leader, as a moral agent, and as a man. His time aboard the Caroline is particularly important. Isolated from Pellew's stabilising presence and surrounded by a makeshift crew under quarantine, Hornblower has to lead with intuition, improvisation, and critically with empathy. His interactions with Bunting are emblematic of this. He doesn't rule with fear, but with patience and understanding, even when discipline must be enforced. This moral clarity is what grounds his character and distinguishes him from the other officers. He's not without doubts, but he never allows those doubts to make him cruel or unjust. Mr. Tapling, played by Ian McNeice, as the diplomatic agent, provides a contrasting foil and is quite an amusing character who adds levity to the episode. He represents the political machinery behind naval operations, faceless negotiations, trade, and policy, but despite his bureaucratic detachment and his prideful start, he also undergoes subtle development. He initially scoffs at being assigned as cook's mate, however grows to respect the role, perhaps initially to get the best cuts of meat, but grows to understand the value of work and seeing smiling faces. His initial aloofness fades in the face of real adversity, and he comes to respect Hornblower's leadership. More than just comic relief or a plot device, Tapling's presence emphasises a theme that runs throughout the episode, the difference between position and leadership. Tapling has authority, but it's Hornblower who commands respect. Captain Pellew continues to be a kind of father figure to Hornblower, but here he also becomes a tutor in tough love. By ordering Hornblower to lead Bunting through the gauntlet, he ensures that Hornblower understands the consequences of command. It is a lesson not found in any seamanship manual. It reinforces the burden of leadership, being forced to witness the consequences of your own decisions and live with them. Yet you sense he is immensely proud of Hornblower, especially after he saves the lives of his crew in a ship from the fireship attack. He doesn't outright show it, but the nuances are there. Pellew knows that sometimes it takes more than books and an exam to make you a good leader, and the ordeal Hornblower went through in this episode proves that. Captain Foster, played by Dennis Lawson, meanwhile, is a study in contrasts. He's reckless, glory-hungry, and brash, but not without a certain code of honour. Initially, Horatio was enamoured by him, citing him as a legend, not quite yet understanding the type of man he really was. His willingness to risk his life alongside Hornblower on the ship shows he's not all bravado, but unlike Hornblower, his heroism is quite a lot more performative. Hornblower's is reflective. This contrast shows that heroism in the Royal Navy can take many forms, but not all of them are sustainable or admirable. And then there's Bunting, played by Andrew Tiernan, whose subplot, though not from C.S. Forester's original books, adds deeply needed emotional texture. He's not a villain, just a man broken by circumstance. He brings the cost of naval life into the sharp focus, the way isolation, hunger, and grief can erode the soul. His final, desperate escape attempt and tragic death underscore that not everyone is equipped to survive the rigid hierarchy of life at sea. I do feel he acted a little bit of a spoiled brat, however, especially with the food rationing, and his attitude at time was just a little bit over the top. But you can understand it given the situation, and you do feel sorry for him for losing a friend. I think in essence the episode grapples duty and humanity, leadership and authority, and the evolving moral compass of a man who will one day be a great commander. It's not enough to be clever or brave. In Hornblower's world, you must also be just. Director Andrew Grieve once again brings a cinematic quality to this episode that elevates it beyond the conventional period drama. It is patient, restrained, and incredibly precise. You can understand why these episodes are held in such high regard. Rather than leaning into melodrama, Grieve often uses silence, gaze, and body language to tell the story. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the scenes aboard the Caroline, where the empty sea and the isolation of quarantine becomes a visual metaphor for Hornblower's own loneliness and leadership. The acting is generally done really well. Ioan Gruffudd once again shines. His ability to show Hornblower's sense of honour and emotional restraint is especially powerful during the gauntlet scene. Watching him force Bunting down the brutal corridor, sword in hand, the shame and sorrow on his face never override the naval discipline in his posture. The sound design is another unspoken hero here. The creaking ships, the slap of waves, and the ever-present gulls form a kind of ambient stress, punctured only by moments of crisis, such as the fireship sequence. And once again, the costuming and production design continue to be such a high quality. The Caroline, in particular, is convincingly ramshackle and a believable stand-in for a plague ship, hastily staffed and barely held together. Details like this add realism that doesn't make it feel staged. And all these elements combine to support the emotional core of the story. The direction doesn't shout, it listens. It gives space for characters to reflect, for silence to settle, and for consequences to resonate. That kind of storytelling is rare in television, especially in period drama, and it's one of the things that makes Hornblower such a remarkable achievement. The examination for Lieutenant is more than just an episode about a test. It is the test. What starts as a simple premise, studying for an exam, evolves into a multifaceted journey that tests Horatio's mind, moral compass, and emotional endurance. The episode excels in its balancing act between high stakes, action, and quiet introspection. The fireship sequence is a thrilling, pulse-pounding finale, but it only lands so effectively because we've been shown the quieter struggles beforehand. Bunting's breakdown, Finch's death, Hornblower's self-doubt, and the slow grind of a command under quarantine. That human groundwork makes the climax more than just spectacle, it's catharsis. If there's a weakness, I think it's a slight tonal shift caused by the original subplot with Bunting, which, while powerful, wasn't part of Forester's original stories. Having said that, the addition is handled with care, offering a grounded look at the pressures on the lower deck, something the book sometimes just gloss over. And in the end, this episode proves to be a defining chapter in the Hornblower saga. It's about leadership not as glory, but to sacrifice. It's about winning not by sword or rank, but by enduring what others can't. Hornblower doesn't pass his exam on paper, but in every other way that matters, he passes the test. And so does the episode. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this episode. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help the channel grow. And I'll see you next time.